Hello to our freaky family. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Kandi.
And this is Sips of Crime. Welcome back, everybody. Hope that everybody had a fantastic Halloween.
Yes.
Did you guys do anything fun for Halloween?
We just did our little trick-or-treating.
Do you actually go to a neighborhood?
Yeah, because nobody does anything in our neighborhood, which me and Jordan actually said that next year he literally wants to type something out and put it in everybody's mailbox and be like, hey.
Oh, that would be actually a really great idea for you guys, because y'all live in a very, communal neighborhood,
and we wouldn't even
a
have to
safe
leave.
neighborhood, too.
And
that was actually a really good idea. Kudos to Jordan.
Right. I thought it was a great idea. I was like, I'll type it up for you. He was like, I'll put it in their mailboxes. I'll take them to the front door,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Let's bring that back.
Right, and that's what he was saying. He remembers having a whole pillowcase.
Absolutely.
Full, just in his neighborhood. And then they would go empty it, get another pillowcase, and go to the next neighborhood.
Yeah.
And have a whole nother pillowcase. And I'm perfectly fine with doing that. Take Jacob's, trick-or-treating a little bit, and then come back and hand out candy. I can't tell you the last time.
Or you guys could take shifts.
But Jacob said trick-or-treat and happy Halloween all day.
Oh.
Until we went trick-or-treating.
Oh, no. And then he just froze up.
Oh, yeah. And there was this, I guess it's it was a Beetlejuice, one of the Halloween decoration Beetlejuices, and you step on the thing and he makes noises and lights up. Well, there was 3 people in front of us on the sidewalk, and Jacob saw it and said, nope. Literally said, nope.
He noped right out of there.
And walked off.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
And then the very last driveway, there was this little skeleton on the front porch, and he was halfway walking up the driveway, and he saw it light up and say boo or whatever it said. He drops his bucket.
Oh.
He said, Ma, I done. I done, Mama, I done. I said, okay, bud. Did y'all have a good trick-or-treat?
Yeah, we had a great trick-or-treating. So my mom actually took her to a trunk-or-treat the day before Halloween,
nice.
And she got a ton of candy there. And then we always go to the downtown portion for trick-or-treating. Again, like you said, it's just easier. We don't live in a neighborhood like you do, and so there really isn't an option for it. And the closest neighborhood that we do live to, they don't do it anymore either, because it's just such a dying trend. And so, the downtown trick-or-treating that all the businesses get together and do is always really fun. And, she gets plenty of candy there. So she got to do it twice in a row, back to back. And, she's racked up, and I think we're good on candy for the year.
Oh yeah, I gave some of ours away.
I'm telling you.
I'm done with it. I'm already done.
Yeah. But no, I absolutely respect, I think that is a great idea for you guys to just be like, hey, we really want to bring back this old school version of trick-or-treating, because nobody does it anymore. We live in a great neighborhood to do it. Let's all gather together and really get this done for our kids, because I think that is, something that has gotten lost over the years, and definitely not how we used to do it.
No.
And I think that there's just something humbling about seeing your neighbors and, having your neighbors see your kids, and, there's just a sense of community there. And so I really think that that's a great idea.
Yes, we will see how next year goes.
Very good, very good. You have been sneaking around on me.
I did. But it was a good
sneak. Yes. It was a good sneak.
I got in touch with Caruso.
Yes.
Again. And
I hope she doesn't mind us calling her that. I do know her first name, but it's not necessarily apparent on her profile. So I just call her Caruso.
Keep it that way.
That's what we're calling it. That's not her actual name. It is her last name, but I just wasn't sure if she wanted her first name put out there. So we've been respectfully calling her Caruso.
Yeah. Which is cute, I think.
I love her last name.
But I reached out to her and I was like, hey, look, I totally need a wine glass, a tumbler made for me and Michelle with the logo that was on the hoodies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told her that I would love some water tumblers and just free reign, do your thing.
Yep.
And so she literally sent a box of goodies.
I know. It was so sweet. You brought it over to my house and we were just like unpacking it together, and it was like so sweet and such a great surprise. And I think that she really hit the nail like on the head for both of us.
Yes.
You know, like she gave me the sparkly one that had like our logo on it and my name. And I actually put coffee in it the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's great for water. And it has that opening that's big enough for a straw as well. But it has the slider lid. And so I was able to put my coffee in it the other day. It worked really, really well. And then you have like the really cute, like transparent one that has the wooden top. Yes. And they're just so adorable.
And it has the little blood coming down.
Yes, it has the little blood coming down. We'll post some pictures on Instagram. But she's just so sweet. Like, she sent us a bunch of extra stuff.
Yes, magnets.
Little magnets and stuff.
And coasters with their names on
Yes,
them.
The coasters.
Lots of straws. Thank
so many
you
straws.
for the straws.
You can just never have enough reusable straws.
And even straws for our wine tumblers.
For the specific tumblers, which you never can find.
No.
So,
it was great.
Yeah, it was a really sweet little surprise. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It was really sweet of you to think of me. And thank you, Caruso. They're adorable. We are absolutely obsessed. I have got a heavy hitter today, so we need to open up some wine.
Yes, we do.
What are we drinking today?
We are going to drink, for the love of leisure, Tiny Umbrellas, Cali wine. It's a red blend, velvety smooth.
I love that name, Tiny Umbrella.
Tiny Umbrellas mixes well with others. I guess like tiny umbrellas for your drink.
For your drinks, yeah. That's so cute.
I'm a little slow today. They have a recipe on the back. It says red blend berry spritzer. It's 2 parts Tiny Umbrellas red blend, 1 part berry sparkling water, mint leaves and berries of choice. You fill your glass with ice, then stir ingredients together. Cheers.
I love that they put a little sangria recipe on the back.
Right.
Nobody does that.
We need to order another bottle and then grab
do the
us.
Sangria.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We so should.
Cheers. Oh, it is very berry forward.
It is. It's good.
It is really good. And that is
very good.
That's the type of red blend that I like. This right here.
Yes, it's very good, but
it's easy.
Smell it.
It's easy to drink. Like,
it is.
You can sip on this.
And if I can say that after the first sip.
Exactly. If Kandi likes the first sip, you know that it's a good red. So, yeah, we have a heavy hitter for you today. We are tackling another serial killer. You guys, if you haven't heard our happy hour with the guys from Guywire, definitely listen to that for sure. And just depending on kind of how you guys like to listen, you guys might enjoy listening to this first and then going back and listening to happy hour. First, I want to just shout them out really quick. Thank you guys so much for having us on. We had an absolute blast.
Yes,
that was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I think that the next time that we get back together, we will be a little bit more structured. That was the first time that we really ever did like a podcast, with other people, other opinions, other people, kind of taking the conversation in different directions. And so we definitely went down a lot of rabbit holes, tons of tangents, but it was a ton of fun. And that's what happy hour.
Right. And you have 4 different people talking.
Exactly.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen, and that's what happy hour is about. Whenever we started to introduce these kind of bonus episodes to you guys, we promised you that it would be fairly raw. And that's us raw. It is what it was.
It was very raw.
Very raw. So, we had a bunch of fun with them. If you guys haven't had a chance to check them out, please go and do so. They are, a way that I always describe them is very, just unapologetic and, very upfront with their feelings. But one of the things that they really focus on is men's mental health. And I think that is such a taboo topic that isn't discussed enough.
Completely agree. They
do a really great job of bringing that home and being very open and vulnerable about their personal struggles as men. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, for any of our male listeners, and to be honest with you, any of our female listeners as well, I would highly recommend to go and check them out. I know that I was able to listen to several of their episodes, and something that I took from it was just giving my husband a little bit more grace.
Right. And that was what I was going to say, was that it kind of gets you into a different mindset than your own.
Right.
Hearing, because, most men don't talk about how they feel or their mental things that they've got going on. Mm-hmm. And I think it opened my eyes that, hey, even though it's not discussed, I always know if something's up with him.
Right.
But that he's probably a lot like me too, that I don't say a lot of these mental things that are on my mind. And I think them being brave enough to open that up can help other men be brave.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that we, as women, we definitely get it in our heads that, you know, we're the ones who are always stressed out. We're the ones who are doing everything. We're the ones who make our husbands' lives easier, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I think it does get a little lost in there, you know, when our men might need a mental break and when they might be a little overwhelmed, and, you know, just simply going to them and asking them, you know, how can I support you? Like, what do you need in this moment? Right. If they want to talk, give them the space to talk. If they need to be left alone, let them be alone, you know? And so just like giving him a little bit more grace is something that I've, definitely taken from the podcast. So go and check them out. They're awesome. Matt and Chris, thank you guys again for having us on. With that being said, though, we did that episode mainly on the huge topic around the Netflix series Monster on, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer. And I feel like, you know, we definitely wanted to discuss that phenomenon that's been going on with that show. It's very popular, very controversial. But I also just wanted, we talked a lot about how dramatized it was in that episode, on our happy hour. And, you know, I really just wanted to kind of wrap that up, if you will, with like an actual fact-based case. I wanted to tackle this very formally in our format, do this the way that we normally do it, which is focusing on the victims and, you know, just making sure that all of the information that we are providing you is factual. Right. So we are going to go ahead. I wasn't actually planning on doing him this early, because we did just do John Wayne Gacy recently, and that one was really heavy. And we try to break up these episodes for you guys, you know, with some lighter ones and keep these like very profound serial killers kind of spaced out. But I also wanted to go ahead and get this out of the way so we don't keep beating a dead horse. Like, I feel like all we've heard about here recently from all of our platforms, not just Sips of Crime, not just Guywire, but just like Facebook, Instagram, all of our Sips of Crime podcasts that we listen to, it's just been Dahmer. And so what I would really like to do is just go ahead and get it out of the way as well. So that's part of the reason that we are going to go ahead and tackle this case. Grab a glass.
Grab a friend.
And let's dive in. So, Jeffrey Dahmer was born Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer on May 21st in 1960. He's a Gemini. Oh. Yeah, May 21st.
So is my child.
Yep. He was born May 21st in 1960 in West Allis, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Joyce and Lionel Herbert Dahmer. He also had a younger brother, and his parents actually allowed him to actually name his younger brother.
No way.
Yeah. He chose David, but boy, were they lucky, because if we had given my 4-year-old the chance to name her baby, she'd have come up with something like crazy, like Squishy or Pokey or something. Like, can you imagine letting your 4-year-old child name your
my new 2-year-old probably would name my kid Chili Beans because he's obsessed with chili beans right now.
Yeah, it's like
and Jingle Bells.
Yeah. So, like I said, he chose David, and they got lucky. Jeff's father, Lionel, was a research chemist, and his mother, Joyce, worked as a teletype machine instructor. Teletype was like a way to send messages back in the day.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of like old school IM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, the family dynamics here are widely speculated. But what we do know about his childhood was that Lionel studies as a chemist. He was in college for part of Jeffrey's life as a child, but that kept him away from the home a lot. And Joyce was described as a hypochondriac, and I think we all know what that means, but I'll define it for you if you don't, just so we're all on the same page. Hypochondria is a condition in which a person is excessively and unduly worried about having a serious illness. An old concept, the meaning of hypochondria has repeatedly changed. It has been claimed that this debilitating condition results from an inaccurate perception of the condition of body or mind despite the absence of an actual medical diagnosis. So she just always thought something was wrong with her. She was constantly going to the doctor, getting medications for this and that. Mm-hmm. So They say she was a hypochondriac and also suffered from like debilitating depression as well. Sources say that she demanded constant attention and she spent a lot of time in bed, and attempted suicide on one occasion by overdosing on her medication. So lots of mental illness here with Joyce. Despite the constant tensions and arguments between his parents in their home, Jeff was described as an energetic and happy child, fairly normal, until he was 4. He was kind of a sickly child, and he was diagnosed with a double hernia. He had to go like undergo surgery for it. It was so bad. A double hernia.
Jeez.
That is like when your organs are like legitimately coming out. Like that's yeah. Unfortunately, no doctor or his parents actually explained this surgery to him, so it really was thought to have traumatized him because, I mean, they just kind of took him to the doctor and had this surgery. Nobody told him what was happening. Nobody told him, kind of what was going on. And so they say that after that surgery, he became very quiet and timid, and had very few friends in school. It was said that he kind of resented the attention his younger brother had, after he was born as well. So, at a fairly early age, he felt very abandoned, very alone, and just like the sense that nobody really was there for him. So, that's going to mess up any kid at that age.
That would mess up any adult.
It would, absolutely. From an early age, Jeff had an interest in dead animals, insects, and particularly bones. This fascination started when he saw his father removing animal bones from beneath their house, like from the crawl space. According to Lionel, Jeff was, quote, oddly thrilled, unquote, by the sounds the bones made, and became preoccupied with animal bones, which the family called his fiddlesticks. He occasionally searched beneath and around the house for additional bones and explored the bodies of live animals to discover where those bones were located. I mean, I think that if this aspect of his life, of his interest, if it was nurtured correctly, could have led to great things.
Oh, yeah, but it was not.
It did not. I think it's awesome when a young child takes, an interest in scientific things. And his dad was actually really thrilled about this because he was a chemist. Mm-hmm. And so science was part of his daily life. And he was very excited that Jeff took an interest in this and that they felt like they could kind of bond over it.
Right.
So I think his dad really did try to nurture that kind of aspect and that interest. So again, if it was nurtured correctly, I think that this isn't a red flag to me, personally. In fact, one night at dinner, they were eating chicken, and Jeff was like, Dad, what would happen if I dropped these chicken bones in bleach? And Lionel, thinking this was something that they could bond over, he's a chemist, this sounds like a science experiment, why not? So they did it. And he even bought him a little chemistry set. We will find later that this was probably not the best idea, but it's what happened.
Well, and unfortunately, if your kid wants to know what happens to something when you do something, you're going to be like, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let's find out together.
Absolutely. And, again, he's not hurting anybody. I mean, they're just chicken bones that he just ate the chicken off of that his mother was serving. Again, I don't know if
it was going to cause any harm.
I don't think this is some people speculate that this is a red flag. I don't foresee that. I have, you and I both have young children. You want to keep those interests kind of going, and you want to answer their questions.
When Jordan, gets a deer.
Yeah.
Now, Jacob has not seen him gut and skin the deer.
You haven't, opened that portion up to him yet?
No. But he has seen a deer head, already
not attached to the body,
right? But just the skeletal part of it.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he knows that it's a deer.
Yeah.
But he doesn't see that in between.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jordan has some antlers that were cut off,
mm-hmm.
and there's still some fur on top. But he never questioned it or anything. He just says buck deer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like I said, I don't really see this as a red flag. Some people do, but I don't think, I mean, as two of us who have young children, not to mention two of us who, we live in the South.
Right.
I think that experimenting with these things and looking into them and being curious about them is a fairly normal thing. I don't foresee this as a red flag, but like I said, some people do. As he grew, this curiosity also grew. He would collect roadkill and other dead animals from around his house and preserve the bones using the methods that his father had taught him. And he would even keep them in jars in his clubhouse. Again, interesting fact, something I don't know if I would allow my child to do, keep remains and such.
But let's ask why.
In jars. He found it interesting. But I can't fault him for that as a child.
Right. But let's redirect. Like, I'm glad you find these interesting, but let's not keep them.
Right, yeah. Maybe let's, observe them. Let's, if you want to dip them in bleach, let's do that. And then let's get rid of them.
Right.
I support that. I could see that.
Yeah. Like, let's
not keep them in jars in your clubhouse. Now, in 1968 is when things started moving from a general childhood interest curiosity into a bit more disturbing. So he's now 8 and starts to impale animal heads on sticks and displays them around his clubhouse in the woods and would invite his friends over to see them. He decapitated the carcass of a dog before nailing the body to a tree. So big escalation here, in my opinion.
This is when you need to be like, what is your deal?
What you doing? Yeah, like I said, now he never killed these animals. He was not killing these animals.
Yeah, but still.
Like I said, I consider this a big escalation. Okay?
Yeah.
Nobody really batted an eye at this. So, if anybody was even paying attention. I mean, his mom's in bed all the time, drugged up on her medications. His dad's gone. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's the fact that nobody, batted an eye at it, or if they just didn't know.
Yeah, probably both.
Maybe a little both. So, he also, during this time, he kind of started, makeshift taxidermy, right? By the age of 14, he had mediocre grades, still showing an interest in science and biology, but he didn't give a shit. So he just didn't try to do well in school. And unfortunately, he started drinking at a very young age and would often show up to school at 14 drunk. He would even keep a flask of scotch in his locker or his jacket pocket and just drink it at school.
Okay, so I can't say that I didn't drink underage.
No, absolutely. We both did that. But
I was not drunk at school with it in my locker. I didn't even have a locker in high school.
I had a locker, did not keep alcohol in it. We also drank on the weekends whenever we were underaged. We went to parties. It was not something we were partaking in on a Tuesday evening after homework.
No, we weren't.
This is a red flag.
The next day.
This is a red flag.
Right.
Okay. During this time, he also played tennis for the school and the clarinet in the school band.
Okay.
Yeah. Jeff became something of a class clown as he continued through high school, often staging pranks, which became known as, quote, doing a Dahmer, unquote. I think that means a little something different now, but... Mm-hmm. These included loud, random outbursts at inappropriate times and simulating epileptic seizures or cerebral palsy at school and local stores, which is very offensive. On occasion, Dahmer would perform these antics for money to purchase more alcohol. So, the other students would pay him to do these things, and then he'd go and buy booze.
I mean, I'm not surprised that the students were paying him to do this, but...
We sold chocolate bars. I'm just saying.
We did.
During his years in high school, he also... Jerky. Oh, yeah. That was good jerky.
Yeah, it was.
I liked the jerky. During his years in high school, he also discovered that he was gay and did not disclose this information to anybody. Jeff would later admit he began fantasizing about dominating and controlling a completely submissive male partner in his early to mid-teens, and his masturbatory fantasies gradually involved focusing on the chest and torsos of men. Now, again, at this point, do you, man? Like, I'm glad you're finding out these things about you. And to each their own. And I think if that's something that, is exciting to you, you should, hopefully find maybe a consenting partner.
Oh, yeah.
To partake in these things, I'm
just going to go ahead and throw it out there. Like, I want to
try this. Are you down?
Like, are you down to be submissive?
Yeah.
And no, you're not? Okay, well, let me go meet someone else. Moving on to the next
person. Exactly. So, yeah, like I said, this really starts at a very early age. Unfortunately, these fantasies did start to become intertwined with dissection, which is what he was experiencing at home with the animals and what he's been doing, for the majority of his childhood. And now he's starting to kind of twist these two things into one, which is, just a secondary huge red flag. When he was about 16, Jeff conceived a fantasy of rendering unconscious a particular male jogger who he found attractive and then making sexual use of his body. On an occasion, Jeff concealed himself in bushes with a baseball bat to lie in wait for this man. However, he did not pass on that particular day. Jeff later admitted that this was his first attempt to attack and render an individual submissive to him. So that's when shit got real. By some brush of fate, this man didn't go running that day and avoided being Jeff's first victim, which is insane to think about. And I would just like to point out, I would love to know more about this jogger, like how he feels about that. If he knows, like
probably not.
Everybody's told this story. It was depicted in the Netflix series. It's been on other documentaries. Like, he has to know, like, hey, I lived in that area. I went running every day. I was sick this one time and didn't go running. I would like to know more about this person.
He might.
Couldn't find it.
He might just would rather just not say anything and
which is
nobody.
Totally fine, and I completely understand and respect that. Me being who I am, I want to know how he feels about that. I'd like to talk to this man.
He'd probably like, thank God.
Right? Oh my gosh. In 1978, Jeff's parents finally got divorced after a failing marriage for years. So David went to live with their mom, and Jeff stayed with his dad. Lionel's job did not change. So he's still working long hours in his lab, not home very often. Jeff was often left at the house alone, often with no food. And right before his 18th birthday, he was just kind of abandoned in the house. His dad goes off and marries a woman named Sherry and just left Jeff there.
Okay, that's great.
Yep. Now, this is when he unfortunately commits his first murder. On June 18th, 3 weeks after his high school graduation, Jeff picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Mark Hicks, who was also 18. I'm not going to be able to go into a ton of, information and detail. Jeffrey Dahmer does have 17 victims altogether. Right. And unfortunately, with all of the other information that I'm going to be providing you, I just don't have the time, nor is the information actually out there for each victim. Right. But I am going to touch base on each victim as briefly or as in-depth as I feel like the story needs to go, but I'm also going to touch base on each, something about each victim, just to keep them up front and center, because that was one of the huge controversies that was such a huge issue. The families were told that they were making this series, that they were going to be focusing on the victims, and the families were very excited about this.
Right.
Unfortunately, that is not at all what the docudrama did. And that royally pissed the families off to the point that some of them are suing Netflix.
It makes sense, though.
It does make sense. So we're going to try our absolute hardest to keep our podcast, as we always do, very victim forward. So, Stephen graduated from Coventry High School, and those who knew him described him as a kind-hearted and compassionate person and loved making new friends. Jeff lured him to his house on the pretext of drinking. Stephen, who had been hitchhiking to a rock concert, agreed to hang out with Jeff for a while and have a few beers. According to Jeff, the sight of the bare-chested man standing on the side of the road stirred his sexual feelings. Although, when Stephen began talking about girls, he knew that any sexual passes that he was, getting ready to make were going to go unwanted. After several hours of talking, drinking, and listening to music, Stephen told Jeff he really needed to get going so he wouldn't miss meeting up with his friends for this concert. We will find that Jeff doesn't like it when people leave. That's kind of a big deal for him, part of what I think he was suffering from as a child. I do think that's playing into this. But he does not like it when they're ready to go. So Jeff bludgeoned him in the head with a 10-pound dumbbell. When he fell unconscious, Jeff strangled him to death with the bar of the dumbbell, stripped the clothes from Stephen's body, explored his chest with his hands, then masturbated as he stood over the corpse. Hours later, after Jeff took a nap, he dragged the body to the basement. So he had to get a little power nap in. The following day, Jeff dissected Stephen's body and buried the remains in a shallow grave in his backyard. Several weeks later, he unearthed the remains and pared the flesh from the bones. He dissolved the flesh in an acid formula before flushing the solution down the toilet. Which I just don't understand. I don't get that. And then he crushed the bones with a sledgehammer and scattered them in the woodland area behind his family home. Unfortunately, Stephen's remains were never found. Mainly because there really wasn't anything left to find.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So that was his first murder. And as you can see, just most people, most serial killers, most of the time their first murders are very fumbly. They're not very well, they don't always know what aspect of it they enjoy. They don't really know, I feel like this was just all cumbersome in one. Just a little bit of everything here. And it's very disturbing, which is one of the reasons that Jeff doesn't really fit into those boxes that we normally put serial killers in. And I find this very interesting. It's terrible, of course, but it's just very interesting. And we're going to find that there are parts about this process, about the murder process that Jeffrey took, that he actually didn't really enjoy.
Right.
And we'll get into that a little further in. 6 weeks later, his father returned to the family home, where he found Jeff living alone, claiming he didn't know Joyce had moved away with David. But I'm sorry, I find that a little hard to believe. I think finding that out would have been fairly easy if you had any communication with your son at this time.
Oh, yeah. You would have known that he was living all alone.
Yeah. So Jeff enrolls and gets accepted to Ohio State University, which,
nice.
Is no small feat there, and was going to major in business. But due to his growing alcohol problem, he didn't finish his first semester. He drops out after 3 months. Now, this newfound interest in his son, Lionel urges Jeff to do something constructive with his life and insists that Jeff join the Army in January of 1979. He goes to basic training in Alabama before training as a medical specialist in Texas. Not sure that was the best thing to go for in the Army, I think, but that's where they put him. During this time in the Army, he is frequently reprimanded for intoxication and subordination, but was eventually deployed to West Germany, where he served as a combat medic, which is just twisted in so many ways.
Oh, yes.
He was saving people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
He was caring for these wounded men. And I just can't wrap my brain around how you can do both.
I couldn't imagine being the one he's caring for. And now, being like...
Knowing there are people out there that are like, that man saved my life.
Right.
Ha!
And now he's murdered all these people.
It's such an interesting concept to think about and to try to wrap your brain around. Due, once again, to his severe alcoholism, his performance deteriorated, and in March of 1981, he was deemed unsuitable for military services and was discharged from the Army. He did, however, receive an honorable discharge, as his superiors did not believe that any problem Jeff had in the Army would be applicable to civilian life.
Well, little did you know.
Yeah, good call there. Jeff was sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for debriefing and provided with a plane ticket to travel anywhere in the country. Jeff later told police that he felt like he could not come home and face his father. He was scared that he would be pissed off that he got, discharged from the Army. So he opted to travel to Miami Beach, Florida, both because he was tired of the cold and in an attempt to really live on his own by his own means. So in Florida, Jeff found a job at a deli and he rented a room in a nearby motel. He spent most of his salary on alcohol and was soon evicted from the motel for non-payment. He initially spent his evenings of, after he got evicted, sleeping on the beach as he continued to work at the sandwich shop until phoning his father and asking if he could return home. So, once back home, he moved in with his dad and his new wife, Sherry, but continued to drink. He was arrested for being drunk and disorderly in public within 2 weeks of being home and was fined $60 and put on probation. Then they tried to wean Jeff off of the alcohol at this point. They were unsuccessful and actually ended up sending him to live with his grandmother at this point. Lionel's mother, her name was Jeffery Dahmer, in December of 1981. Now, Jeff actually loved his grandmother. She was one of the few people that, he actually respected. Mm-hmm. And it said that she was also the only one that he would ever show, actual affection towards. Mm. I mean, any boy and his grandmother. I mean, come on. I mean, that's a unbreakable relationship. They do. So sweet. So they really thought that, that her influence on him would be a good one. So they thought that her influence would get him to stop drinking, get a job, and start living responsibly. Initially, living with his grandmother was working out very well. He accompanied her to church, willingly undertook chores, actively sought work, and abided by most of her house rules, although he did continue to drink and smoke. In early 1982, Jeff found employment as a phlebotomist in the Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center.
Yeah. Wrong move.
Yes. I think that in the docudrama there was this weird short thing about him taking the blood bags home and possibly drinking them. That didn't actually happen.
Yes, it was. And it was saying that he worked at a blood drive. Mm. It wasn't
No, it was a plasma center. He did not drink the blood. That was dramatized. He held this job for 10 months before being laid off. Jeff would remain unemployed for the next 2 years, living off whatever money his grandmother would give him. Which I'm assuming wasn't a whole lot.
It couldn't have been.
No. Shortly after being laid off, he was arrested for indecent exposure on August 8th of 1982 at the Wisconsin State Fair.
Mm.
He exposed himself, quote, on the south side of the Coliseum, in which 25 people were present, including women and children, unquote. For this incident, he was convicted and fined $50 plus court cost.
So why are we not checking on his mental state at this point? You've been kicked out of the Army.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I think that bothers me about this particular case, and I do discuss this a little bit on our Happy Hour Guy Wire episode, but I truly believe that there is major mental illness going on here. Yeah. And he is, in fact, diagnosed with several mental disorders.
Well, look at his mother.
And I was just about to say, he comes by it honestly, from his mother. I have a hard time believing that this man was mentally stable in any way, shape, or form, and that he was diagnosed and was suffering from mental illness, and I just don't understand how somebody can say that didn't take part in what he became.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I think it was a huge factor as to why he did the things that he did.
Agreed.
In January 1985, he was out of money. He needed to buy more alcohol. His grandmother's money just wasn't cutting it anymore. So he gets a job as a mixer at the Milwaukee Ambrosia Chocolate Factory, where he worked the graveyard shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 6 nights a week with Saturday evenings off. He made $8.75 an hour, which was pretty good for that time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Shortly after getting this job, he was at the library where a man slipped him a note offering to perform oral sex on him. And even though Jeff didn't actually respond to this person or take him up on this offer, it stirred up all the fantasies of control and dominance that he had developed as a teenager, and he began familiarizing himself with the Milwaukee gay bars, bathhouses, and bookstores. Now, see, in this moment, if he hadn't murdered somebody or turned into what he did, I'd be like, do you? Good for you. Right. Go embrace that side of you. Be who you are. We support that. Just do it with a consenting partner.
Right.
They're out there. I feel like at this point, of any sexual fantasy that you might have, there's probably a chat room for it somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
After all of the cases that we have covered, I feel fairly confident that there's a community out there for everybody. By late 1985, Jeff was frequenting these bathhouses quite often. Now, I needed some context here, okay? And I'm sure that some of our listeners do too, so I'm going to break it down for you. I was unfamiliar with the idea of these bathhouses until I actually saw the docudrama.
Right.
Until we watched it. I didn't know these places existed, nor did I know what they were.
No, I thought a bathhouse was just like a bathroom and a shower and...
like a place where you could like spruce up, you know? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I started wondering, you know, what these were. And so I did a little bit of digging, so I'll explain. These were membership clubs advertised as a type of spa or sauna for gay men. Though they were advertised that way, they were in fact there for sexual encounters. That's the whole point of these buildings being in existence. So they had like hot tubs and sauna rooms, but they also had private type bedrooms that like men could, you know, go to and have private sexual encounters together. And in what they considered a safe environment.
Right.
During his sexual encounters at these bathhouses, he became frustrated at his partners because they moved around during sex. He would later state that he had trained himself, quote, "I trained myself to view people as objects of pleasure instead of people," unquote. For this reason, beginning in June of 1986, he started drugging the men he would bring to these bathhouses with sleeping pills. He would buy them a drink and slip the crushed up pills into theirs, and they would pass out fairly quickly after that, and he would have his way with them. This was working out very well for Jeff. And to maintain an adequate supply of his medication, he informed the doctors that he was working nights at the chocolate factory and needed the medication to adjust to that schedule. So they gave it to him. So after a while, the attendants of these bathhouses, the people who ran them, started catching on to what Jeff was doing, and they actually revoked his membership and banned him from the houses. So Jeff had to start using hotel rooms to continue his practices. During this time, he saw an article in the newspaper that a young 18-year-old man had passed away, and that the article was, regarding his funeral. So Jeff decided, well, I'm going to go dig him up and have sex with his corpse. The ground was too cold, and he couldn't actually dig into the hard ground, so he just went home. He fully intended...
That's so disgusting.
...to take this young man's body back to his house. Like that was the plan. But he couldn't get through the dirt.
That's disgusting.
Yep. He also stole a male mannequin from a store at one point, which he briefly used for sexual stimulation. He had actually hidden in a dressing room until the store closed, and then took it home with him until his grandmother discovered the item stowed away in his closet and threw it away because obviously she thought it was creepy.
Agree, it's creepy, but would that have sufficed, or would it have just really been a matter of time before he got bored with that.
This was something else that we bring up in our Happy Hour Guy Wire episode. One of the things that he does state later in life is that he, enjoyed the beating heart. He enjoyed the warmth of their bodies. He didn't want them to move, but he did want them breathing.
Well, then how was he going to have sex with the dead guy? Because he wasn't going to be warm. His heart wasn't going to be beating.
I think at this point, and again, this is why we can't put him in a box of all of these other serial killers. He states that the killing was not what excited him. That was just a means to an end. He did not enjoy that portion of it. It really was a situation where, because, you have to think about it. As a necrophilia, their heart was not beating at that point either.
True.
But it was something he wanted, and that's why, and we'll get into this a little later, but that's why he attempted to make these human sex zombies. He tried very hard to keep them alive because he didn't actually want to kill them, nor did he actually want to have sex with a dead person. It was just a means to an end. It's such an interesting situation.
It's just all crazy.
On September 8th, 1986, Dahmer was arrested again and charged with lewd and lascivious behavior for masturbating in the presence of two 12-year-old boys. He initially claimed he was just peeing and didn't know that anybody was watching, and was sentenced to 1 year of probation, with additional instructions to undergo counseling.
Okay. So here we are with charge number 3 or 4. So why are we not looking back?
Yep.
And seeing that he's been charged before? He does have a criminal past. Yep. He got discharged from the Army, whether it was for drinking or not. Why are we not looking back?
On November 20th, 1987, Jeff goes back to his old ways. The public masturbation and the mannequin was just not giving him what he wanted, so he goes to the bar and meets 25-year-old Stephen Tuomi and persuaded him to accompany him to the Ambassador Hotel, where Jeff had rented a room for the evening. Stephen had grown up in Michigan and worked as a short-order cook and was described as artistic and friendly. One of his classmates recalls that while they were in art class together, Stephen had made this beautiful stained glass lamp that he still remembers to this day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He said that Stephen was talented and could do just about anything artistic.
Aww.
According to Jeff, he intended to simply, quote, drug him and lay beside him as he explored his body, unquote. That's all. That was all he wanted to do. I'd like to drug this person, and I was just gonna rape them. Sexually assault their bodies. That's all. That's all, no big deal. The following morning, however, Jeff woke up to find Stephen lying beneath him on the bed, his chest, quote, crushed in, unquote, and was black and blue with bruises. Blood was seeping from the corners of his mouth, and Jeff's fists and forearms were extensively bruised. Jeff goes and purchases a large suitcase in which he placed the body into and took him back to his grandmother's house. A whole week later, that is 7 days, if anybody was wondering, that he left this man in the suitcase. After that, he severed the head, arms.
How did they not smell that?
I'm telling you, man, I don't understand. So many times, somebody could have intervened. You know that a body stinks after 7 days. Come on. It stinks after, hours, if not taken care of properly.
Well, yeah, even, when you're dying, you have a smell.
Exactly.
That is the smell of death.
And we know this because we are not killers. Because we did, in fact, work in nursing homes several years of our lives. We were both CNAs, and we did a lot of...
We dealt with a lot of death.
Yes, we did. It was part of our job. So, just wanted to throw that out there. But you're right, though. Whenever somebody is in that stage of life, and afterwards, right. It's a smell, and I don't understand how...
They're in a suitcase.
He's in a suitcase for 7 days. Oh my gosh, moving on. We will get to the smell a little later. After a week, you're in it now. I'm sorry. You're here with me. You gotta continue forward.
Okay.
We're pushing forward. He severed the arms, head, and legs from the torso. He then placed the dismembered body parts into garbage bags and wrapped the bones inside a sheet and pounded them until they were splinters with a sledgehammer. The entire dismemberment process took Jeffrey approximately 2 hours to complete. He disposes of all of Stephen's remains in the trash. Well, everything except his head, which he did wrap in a blanket, and he kept it for 2 weeks.
So 4 weeks later.
Yes.
And we don't smell anything dead.
Correct. He then boiled the head in a mixture of a type of detergent and bleach in an effort to retain the skull. So he wanted to keep the skull, which he then used for masturbation. Eventually, the skull was rendered too brittle by the bleaching process, so Jeff had to dispose of that as well.
I have some weird questions.
So many questions.
Was he masturbating in the skull?
I don't know. I'm getting very Ed Kemper vibes from him. Again, we're going to be covering Ed Kemper, but he did this kind of stuff too. Like very strange things with masturbation and body parts. I don't know the answer to that question. I apologize. I don't know if I want to know the answer.
I don't, but if it's too brittle, like, what?
Yeah. He would later actually state that he had no memory of killing Stephen whatsoever, and that he couldn't believe it happened.
So, disassociation.
Yeah, he would later speculate that he might have gotten so drunk and tried to tear Stephen's heart out. He thinks that might have happened. But he doesn't remember it.
Okay, well then clearly you do remember it, you liar.
I think I do believe him.
Or is this a multiple personality?
He was diagnosed eventually with a multi-personality situation. Disorder, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the exact medical terminology as to what his actual diagnosis was, but that multiple personalities was in there. However, he admitted to everything.
Okay.
Why keep this one you know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that he did this on purpose. I think that this could have happened for several reasons. I think that he could have disassociated, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. Let's just disassociate. This was something that, maybe stirred up something in him that he wasn't comfortable with. And he just disassociated. He was also an alcoholic, like a major alcoholic. There is a huge chance that he was just too blackout drunk to remember it.
Oh, yeah.
No psychological reason whatsoever. He could have just literally been too drunk.
It could have been that he drank so much and that messed his whole mental state up.
Yeah.
And he was doing all these things drunk, but then when he got sober, he's so jacked up.
Yeah, I mean, tons of it, but I do truly actually believe that he doesn't remember it because, like I said, whenever he gets caught, he confesses to everything. Why keep this one a secret? Stephen's family reported him missing in December of 1987. He is still considered a missing person to this day. Yeah. Even though Jeff admitted to this, there's no evidence to prove it. So they don't have a body to confirm and corroborate his story as to what happened. And so they can't officially close the case, and Jeff was never charged with this murder.
If I was the family, I'd be pissed.
Yeah. Because of logistics. They cannot close this case, and he is still considered a missing person to this day.
And he will be. Well, you're not going to find
No, you're not going to find anything. Not with Dahmer. After this is when he starts actively seeking victims. And also, during this time, he stops using hotel rooms and just starts bringing them back to his grandmother's house. So,
poor grandma.
Yeah. Now, like I was saying before, just like Gacy, the victim list is long. So I'm not going to be going into each detail of each one of them, but I will be touching on each one. So y'all just stick with me. 2 months after Stephen's murder, Jeffrey encounters 14-year-old James Doxtater and offered him $50 to pose for some nude photos. At his grandmother's house, they did have sex, and afterwards, Jeff drugged him and strangles him and proceeds to partake in necrophilia. He left the body in the cellar for a week before dismembering and disposing of him in the same fashion as Stephen.
Can Grandma not smell?
Yeah. On March 21st of 1988, he meets Richard Guerrero at a bar and takes him back to his grandmother's house, offering him $50 to simply spend the night with him. Richard was also drugged, strangled with a leather strap, and dismembered, all within 24 hours of arriving to the house. So this was a very busy night.
But, and not to go off into a tangent, in the docuseries, it says, or they portray it as his grandma like, oh my God, it stinks in here, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But nowhere in research does it say that she did that. So, in the docuseries, and I do touch on this here in just a little bit, but I will say, in the docuseries, it's very dramatized, where she's bringing it up often, she's investigating, she's seeking out what could this smell be, but really, in all reality, she brings it up once to Lionel. And that's it.
And she thinks it's because Jeff is just gross. Which he was. Absolutely. But, like, she, you know, and he does, when his dad confronts him about this, he does just go back to say, like, it's just my taxidermy stuff, like, just the same stuff, like, I'm just getting roadkill. So that does happen, but it only happens once, and it's a fleeting situation. Like, it is not the main concern, and his grandmother is not actively seeking out what's going on during this time. So, yeah. I don't see how somebody could live in a house like that and not, but, I mean...
I smell my own child's pee-pee diapers.
Yeah, from down the hall.
In the trash can.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So, anyway. In April of 1988, Jeff comes across Ronald Flowers, who was having car trouble after a night out with his friends. Jeff offered his aid and told him that he could take him back to his grandmother's house, they could go back and get the car, and then come and jump it off. Once back at his grandmother's house, Jeff makes them coffee and actually spikes Ronald's drink with the sleeping pills. Ronald recalls drinking his coffee quickly because he was really just trying to get home and wasn't looking for any sort of a sexual encounter of any kind. But Jeff just kept staring at him like he was waiting for something to happen. That's when he got really dizzy, fell forward onto the floor, and attempted to crawl away from Jeff, but he gets him off the floor and back into his armchair. Now, his grandmother actually confronts Jeff during this interaction. She walks downstairs and sees that he's not alone. The Netflix series depicts her intervening very heavily during this time. That's not actually what happened. In the series, she actually, like, insists on sitting with this young man until he sobers up and blah, blah, blah. That's not what happened. Jeff explains to his grandmother that they had just had a little too much to drink and that he was going to sleep it off, and his grandmother actually goes back to bed.
Oh, okay.
Yep. There's also some conflicting information as to what actually happens next, but Ronald's next memory is waking up in the hospital, and he was badly bruised and missing his wallet and bracelet. He recalls noticing that his underwear was actually inside out, and after finding blonde hairs, he knew that he had been drugged and assaulted by Jeff. Yeah, the reason that this information is kind of skewed is because Ronald actually goes to report this to the police, and after practically having to beg them to look into this, we're going to find there's a lot of police issues in this case.
And it's sad that somebody has to beg the police to look into that.
He was a black man. He was a gay man. Police were like, nope, that's your deal. Sorry. And it was disgusting. But
things should not be that way.
After practically having to beg them, they do eventually go and speak to Jeff about what happened. But again, the reason that it's conflicting information is because Jeff tells them that they had consensual sex and that was all he knew. Like, we had some drinks. He came back to my house. We had consensual sex. He had no idea when he left or why he would be reporting him for anything. The police find no evidence of foul play in the house,
right.
And they dismiss the report. So Jeff denies any abuse or assault, and Ronald doesn't remember what happened. So that's why there's information that's kind of up in the air about this particular incident.
Right.
He does say, though, Ronald does say in an interview that he does think that the fact that his grandmother came downstairs and actually saw him, that's why Jeff didn't kill him.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah. So after this, his grandmother is now fed up, and she wants him to move out, stating that he was drinking too much, she didn't approve of him bringing men into her home, and that there was a foul smell coming from the basement and garage that Jeff wouldn't clean up. So he had to go. On September 25th of 1988, he moved into a one-bedroom apartment at 808 North 24th Street, but 2 days later, he is arrested for drugging and sexually fondling a 13-year-old boy, Tomac Synthesynphone. He had lured him to his new apartment to pose for some nude photos. The boy was able to escape and report it. He was able to identify him and actually led police to the apartment. Jeff was arrested at the chocolate factory and pleaded guilty to the charges of second-degree sexual assault and of enticing a child for immoral purposes. While he was awaiting his sentencing hearing, he actually murdered his fifth victim, 24-year-old Anthony Sears. He worked at a Baker Square in Milwaukee and had been promoted to the role of manager before his death. Sears aspired to be a model and was saving money in hopes of leaving Milwaukee. Jeff states that he was actually not looking for a victim on this particular night, but that Sears just started talking to him at the club. So there's your mistake right there. You just can't talk to him. He did agree to go back to his grandmother's house. They had oral sex consensually before Jeff drugged him and strangled him. He dismembered the body as he had the others, but this would be the first time that he actually kept a body part. So he states he found Anthony extremely attractive and actually kept his head and genitalia in a wooden or metal box.
Oh my God.
Again, conflicting information. The Netflix series depicts it as a wooden box with a lock. Jeff states that it was metal, so a wooden or metal box. This was the box that made his father suspicious. But according to a recorded interview with Jeff and his dad, who were actually in the same room during this interview, the box was never actually opened in his father's presence. So Lionel did ask him about this box, and he originally just thought oh, it's porn. If it's porn, It's no big deal, but you are living under your grandmother's roof. You have to get rid of it. You can't, so there was some issues, but he never actually opened the box. There was no situation where his father came and he had to remove the head from the box to show him, it just didn't happen. They never actually opened the box, but he was confronted about it. On May 23rd of 1989, Dahmer was sentenced to 5 years probation and 1 year in the House of Corrections with a work release permit in order for him to keep his job.
So how many times have you been on probation? And
a lot.
Nobody looking into this.
Yep. Because he was able to still go to work, he just moved his little box of horror into his work locker so that he could enjoy it while he was at work and then go back to jail, where he obviously couldn't have it. So there you go.
So why was nobody looking into this locker?
Yeah,
you knew this man was going back to jail. Why were you not looking after his stuff?
Yep, never opened the locker. After his year in the House of Corrections, he moved into the Oxford's apartments, which are the famous apartments that everybody associates him with, into apartment 213, taking his box with him. It's now 1990. So Jeffrey is now back on his bullshit. Within 1 week of moving in, he's got to christen the new apartment. He lured Raymond Smith to his apartment, saying that he would pay him $50 for sex. Raymond was 32 at the time and went by the nickname Ricky Beaks.
Okay.
Little is known about him, but he did have a 10-year-old daughter. Raymond was drugged, strangled like the others, but this time Jeff went and bought a Polaroid camera after he murdered Raymond and took several pictures of Raymond's body in numerous suggestive positions before dismembering him. This camera would obviously become part of his MO and end up being a huge factor in this case. He states that this was a way for him to, he says, remember their beauty and relive the experiences if he couldn't keep them. So he's still trying to figure out a way to have a person under his control in a submissive state and not have them leave, but still be alive. That's where we're at. Raymond's family reported him missing pretty quickly, and about a year into the investigation, this pond scum flea bag calls his sister on the phone and tells her to stop looking for her brother, that he had killed her. I obviously don't know if he revealed, who he was during this phone call, but admits to killing him. And that's just a horror all in itself. I will tell you, though, just some personal opinions here. I don't believe he did this to be malicious.
No, I do think because it was the fact that, he's not wanting anyone to leave him. He doesn't like being alone. He's just trying to find someone who will never leave. He is just, in his mind, trying to do the right thing.
I completely agree with you. I'm so glad that you're on the same page with me. This, I truly think, like you said, this was kind of his way of, trying to do the right thing.
Right.
Not necessarily remorseful.
No, not that he's sorry for what he did by any means.
Yeah.
But, hey, stop looking.
You're not going to find him.
I did do this.
Let me try to put you out of, that mindset.
Right.
He's gone. And I think Matt actually brought this up in our happy hour episode where he really sees a lot of identification with Jeffrey Dahmer and Asperger's.
Yes,
or autism.
Does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely agree with that. I think, in my head, after, meeting and knowing people who suffer from Asperger's or autism, regardless of really where they are on the spectrum, they're very matter-of-fact people.
Yeah.
They're very matter-of-fact people. They don't allow emotion to kind of get into there. Now, I do believe that Jeffrey had a heightened sense of emotion, and that's one of the reasons he committed these crimes. But they are also just very matter-of-fact people. It's like you said, stop looking. Right. Let me put that out of your head, and let me just tell you he's dead.
Well, in looking at it as his point of view, not wanting to be abandoned, but I could see it being in a, he abandoned you, I killed him, so he's not coming back. I could see it
could absolutely go that way as well. So again, just another very interesting factor into this monster. 1 week after Raymond's murder, Jeff lured an unidentified young man to his apartment. But this time he accidentally drank the spiked drink.
He deserves it.
He does. Yeah, I agree.
He deserves it.
Here's a little taste of your own medicine, Jeffrey. So he ended up drugging himself. And when he woke up, he found that his intended victim was gone, had stolen several articles of clothing, $300, and a watch. So,
payback's a bitch.
Payback's a bitch. In June of 1990, Jeffrey lured a 27-year-old acquaintance by the name of Edward Smith to his apartment. He was drugged, strangled, and dismembered, but he actually placed Edward's body into his freezer where he would stay for several months. He was also an inspiring model from Milwaukee with a very loving family. Edward's sister, Carolyn, who actually becomes a very prominent figure in this trial, and his brother, J.W. Smith, read out statements in the court for their family. They said that Ed was raised in a Christian home where he learned how to be a loving, trustful, respectful human being. They said that Eddie inherited all the blessings that a family structure had to offer. The greatest of those blessings was love. Unfortunately, his remains were never found, but photographs were.
Yeah.
Less than 3 months after the murder of Edward Smith, Jeff encountered a 22-year-old Chicago native named Ernest Miller outside of a bookstore. Ernest was hoping to become a professional dancer and spent his time working after he graduated from Milwaukee High School at the Art of Wes Davidson. He was about to start attending classes at the Arts College in Chicago before his life came to an end. His aunt said he was a talented dancer, and he was singing and performing even whenever he was young and used to sing at church. He did unfortunately agree to accompany Jeff back to his apartment for $50 and further agreed to allow him to listen to his heart and stomach. When Jeff attempted to perform oral sex on Ernest, he stated, quote, "That'll cost you extra." So Jeff gave him a laced drink. On this occasion, Jeff only had 2 sleeping pills left, so Ernest didn't actually fully pass out. So Jeff severed his carotid artery with the same knife he used to dismember his victims' bodies. Miller bled out in a matter of minutes, and Jeff then posed the nude body for photos before dismemberment. Jeff wrapped Ernest's heart, liver, bicep, and portions of flesh from his legs in plastic black bags, placing them in the freezer, and placed his severed head in the refrigerator. This is when the cannibalism starts. Jeff really liked this guy and wanted him to be a, quote, permanent part of him, unquote. 3 weeks after that, on September 24th, Jeff encountered a 22-year-old father of 2 named David Thomas at the mall. He persuaded him to return to his apartment for a few drinks, offering to pay him for photos. After David was drugged and asleep, Jeff stated he did not feel attracted to him anymore. He was just like, yeah, he's not as hot as I thought he was. However, he was afraid that when he woke up, he would be pissed off about being drugged, so he killed him and took photos of his body. Did not keep any body parts from this man.
Why did you even have to do that?
Yep. I mean, you literally had the option of letting him wake up and being like, man, you drank a lot, buddy.
Right. Like, you could have played it off.
Tried your hardest, at least. No.
And let him sleep. And, by God, even if you would have got caught for drugging him, you probably would have only got probation.
I mean, come on. That's actually a very good point. So, we've now made it to 1991. In February of 1991, Jeffrey observed a 17-year-old boy by the name of Curtis Slaughter standing at a bus stop. Those who knew Curtis described him as a young and vivacious boy who had the entire world at his disposal. After losing his job at a nursing assistant facility, he had planned to become a model and finish college. Jeff went through his normal routine of drugging him, but this time, for some reason, he handcuffed Curtis's hands behind his back before strangling him. Not really sure why he started doing that, but he also dismembered Curtis and took photos. 2 months later, Jeff met 19-year-old Errol Lindsay. Those who knew him described him as an upstanding and generous individual who loved helping others and took pleasure in making new friends. He was also known to be a young man who was quite popular among his friendship group and was very close to his family, especially his mother and sister. Errol was heterosexual, and this was his first attempt at creating zombies. Jeff did this by drugging him and drilling a hole in his skull and poured hydrochloric acid into it. According to Jeff, Errol woke up pretty instantly after introducing the acid into his head. And he said, "I have a headache. What time is it?" In response to this, realizing and pissed off that it didn't work, Jeff drugged him again and then strangled and dismembered him like the others.
What the fuck?
And that's one of the biggest things that I just can't wrap my brain around. You're telling me that he is sane, he is able to go through court without an insanity defense, but
and he's drilling people's heads.
And you're introducing these random liquids into people's heads thinking you can capacitate them and create a zombie? How is that mentally... that's the part that I can't wrap my head around.
I can't. There's a lot I can't wrap my head around with Mr. Dahmer here.
It's a lot. Now, at this time, other people who lived in the apartment complex started complaining about the smell. And the building manager was approached several times. And he actually approached Jeff several times. And he would just brush it off by saying, "Oh, I had some meat in my freezer and my freezer went out and the meat went bad. I'm trying to take care of it. This won't be a problem going forward." He came up with several excuses.
Now, I've had my refrigerator go out. And my meat did not smell like dead bodies.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. He also used the defense that his fish had died, and he was trying to get rid of that. Like I said, this happened several times. He came up with several different excuses. I don't understand how he didn't smell it, is my biggest thing. Like, if other people...
It might be one of those things that you got so used to the smell, you don't smell it.
Another thing that kills me is, like, all of these men that he kept bringing into the apartment who weren't used to it. How did they not smell it and be like, "Nah, dude.
Yeah.
I'm not going in there.
I gotta go home.
Yeah, I'm out. Thanks. Anyway, though. I'm about to break your heart.
It's okay.
And I just want to apologize for it now. And you'll understand here in a minute. But let's take a drink.
Okay.
Okay? Jeff's next victim number 12, was Tony Hughes.
I know.
Now, in the Netflix series, this murder was depicted almost as a relationship that blossomed over what seems to be several days, if not longer. Mm-hmm. Viewers describe this episode as one of the most heartbreaking. And me and Kandi see why. Because we were too. We see Jeff actually connecting with this person as a person.
Yeah.
He even appears to be kind of falling in love.
Yeah. Like
actual true love. We see Jeffrey actually connecting and possibly falling in love. In this episode, Tony has to leave to go back to his family's house, but promises to return soon. And Jeff just snaps at the thought of him leaving and kills him. Unfortunately, this is not how that murder played out.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, it didn't happen. So, Tony was born on August 26th of 1959. Reports claim that Tony was prescribed some very strong medication during his childhood as an infant, which did interfere with his hearing ability and rendered him permanently deaf. Regardless, he was determined to not let such an inconvenience stop him and had great aspirations for the future. Tony moved to Madison, Wisconsin for a higher education and worked as a model on the side. He communicated with notes because most people did not know sign language and met Jeff at a nightclub one night. Jeff seemed fine with this type of communication as they wrote notes back and forth at the bar. Jeff told him how attractive he was and wanted to take some photos of him. Once back at the apartment, Tony was subjected to all the normal routines. He was drugged and strangled, and Jeff partook in necrophilia with his body. And actually left his body in the apartment for 3 days before dismembering him.
See, so why... That's what kills me. The docuseries made it seem like something it totally wasn't.
That it could have, changed him, brought him out of this. It was not like that. And I don't even mean to, like, downplay it the way that it sounds like I'm doing. I mean, every murder that was committed is terrible. And it was a human life that was taken. But Tony was just one of 17.
And yet the docuseries made it seem like it was so sentimental.
Yeah, and both of us had a very emotional attachment to Tony.
Yes.
We felt it. It hit us, you know, really deep in the feels. And I wasn't looking forward to telling you that just, unfortunately, the factual...
That's such bullshit.
It is bullshit. I agree. Days after this, Jeff encountered a 14-year-old boy named Konarak Synthesenphone, a Wisconsin Avenue. He was on his way to the park to play soccer when he crossed paths with Jeffrey. Unknown to Jeff and Konarak, this was the younger brother of Somsak.
Oh, gosh.
Who was the 13-year-old boy Jeff was arrested for molesting in 1988.
So, did the boy know that?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, so Konarak had no idea this was the man who had molested his older brother, and Jeff had no idea this was the younger brother of that boy who sent him to jail. Like,
oh my goodness.
It was just a fucking coincidence that Jeffrey...
That's just crazy.
...traumatized this family twice.
What the heck?
Yeah. He offered Konarak, who, again, just to throw that out there, was 14, money to take some photos. And according to Jeff, he was initially reluctant to this proposal, but eventually changed his mind and agreed. After they were in the apartment, Jeff took a few photos of Konarak before drugging him, again with that Polaroid camera that spits the photos out immediately. I'm just putting that out there for foreshadowing. Before Konarak fell unconscious, Jeff led him into the bedroom, where the body of Tony Hughes was still laying on the floor.
And Konarak didn't see that?
There's some speculation that Jeffrey thinks that Konarak did see the body, but he was drugged at this point,
okay. And
he just wasn't fully unconscious. So, I mean, yeah, he thinks that he might have seen it, but it just didn't register. Yeah. After Konarak was unconscious, Jeff once again attempted this whole sex zombie thing. He drilled a hole into the skull and poured acid into the frontal lobe, is what he was attempting to do. Jeff then drank several beers, took a nap next to the unconscious Konarak, and then went to the bar for a few drinks.
But this didn't work the first time.
He thought he maybe just didn't do it right.
So we're going to do it again.
He's going to do it again. So like I said, he took a nap, then decided, hey, I need a drink, and went to the bar, and then to purchase more alcohol. Now, when Jeff returns, this is when shit had went down. Okay? When Jeff returns, he finds Konarak sitting naked on the stairs of the apartment with 3 women who are very distressed. 2 of these women are Glenda Cleveland and her daughter. They had found Konarak, who had woken up and successfully escaped Jeff's apartment and was stumbling around, drugged, and incoherent. Glenda recalls seeing blood running down his leg, but he was also speaking in Laotian, so nobody could understand what he was saying. And these women were just trying to help.
Right.
When Jeff approaches the group, he tells the women that Konarak is 19 years old, that his name was John, and that they were friends, and he had just drank a little too much. That he was going to take him back upstairs to sleep it off. As he's trying to take him back inside, the women are not having any of this because, I mean, they're badasses and they can tell that something's going on and something's wrong. And so they call 911, who arrive shortly after. Upon the police arrival, Jeff tells them the same story, that he's his boyfriend and that they had just had a fight, and he acts like this is something that happens sometimes whenever they fight. Like, oh, he does this. He just, like, he gets really drunk and leaves, and I have to bring him back. Like, that's what he tells these people. And apologizes immensely for this behavior. And, really, he talks to the cops about how much he appreciates them, how much the crime rate in this area has been so bad, and, just, like, feeding into their ego, and, and he just needs to take him back upstairs and let him sleep it off. Everything's going to be fine. The police, of course, are acting like they could absolutely care less about this situation. They are completely put off by the idea that these two are gay lovers. And since Conrack was clearly not speaking English, they didn't want to deal with any of it. And they take Jeff at his word and take the boy back up to his apartment of death.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Once they're back in the apartment to help verify his claim of being this boy's boyfriend, he shows the officers the fucking photos that he just took from the Polaroid camera that spits him out.
Oh, nice.
Immediately.
So
they have no way of verifying that those weren't taken at another day, or, he also shows them the clothes that he had taken off him that were neatly folded in the living room. Like, look, his stuff is here, like, obviously, like, he's staying over with me, like, and he just freaked out.
What the heck?
Yep. So he shows the police these things as, quote, proof, unquote. They, that they co-inhabit this apartment. The police officers were once again put off by the photos. The smell of the apartment also. They were like, oh God, like, I'm not going in there. And just wanted to get out of there. They fucking left, telling Jeff to, quote, take care of him, unquote. And then listed the incident as a domestic dispute.
See, that's just ridiculous. No matter if they're gay or not, like, you should have definitely looked into that. You should have somehow checked his ID, saw that he was not 19.
Yeah. Once they were gone, he poured more acid into Conrack's skull, and he died instantly.
Oh my God.
Glenda and the other women were extremely upset about how this was handled and actually called the police to check up on this. And they were told that the incident was, quote, a boyfriend and boyfriend thing. Whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. And that it was taken care of, and that this guy was, in fact, an adult, even though they never checked his ID or did any kind of verification into who this boy was. Not to mention, they completely missed the dead body of Tony, who was laying in the the bedroom.
So you clearly didn't do your research.
Yep. They pretty much told her that it was over and that everything was fine. You guys can actually Google the phone calls between Glenda and the police. They are out there. The police officers can also later be heard coming over the scanner making jokes about the call that they were just on, stating, quote, drunk, naked Asian male returned to his sober boyfriend. Jeffrey had just left the bar and was carrying alcohol back to his apartment.
Right. So clearly no one was sober.
No. So, that wasn't even, just the most, innate, hey, this is obvious. They didn't even pick up on that. They're also laughing and stating that they would need to be deloused after this before they go on their next call. And it's just disgusting. If the police officers had done even a sliver of their job that night, Jeff could have been arrested. All of his later victims would have been alive, and Cognac would still be alive.
Oh, yeah.
If they had simply ran Jeff's name, all they had to do was run his name. Jeff's name.
Yeah.
They would have seen his conviction for assaulting his older brother. Cognac's older brother. It would have popped up. Jeff did say that he was dead within 20 minutes of being back in the apartment.
What the hell?
Yeah. Later, these officers were fired for, quote, the extent of their disregard for basic police procedure constitutes gross negligence, unquote. But they did get their jobs back shortly after this, and one of them even was made a police chief.
You're kidding me.
I am not. Yep. Now, Jeff goes absolutely crazy after this. Not that he wasn't already crazy. I mean, he had killed over 12 people at this point, but he starts killing every few days after this. He really ramps it up. So again, I'm going to try to just get through these next couple of days. On June 30th, Jeff traveled to Chicago, where he met 20-year-old Matt Turner at a bus station. Those who knew him described him as a good kid who was bright and articulate and had high aspirations of becoming a model. Matt accepted Jeff's offer to travel to Milwaukee for a professional photo shoot. At the apartment, he was drugged, strangled, and dismembered. Jeff placed his head and internal organs in separate plastic bags and put them into the freezer. 5 days later, on July 5th, Jeff lured 23-year-old Jemiah Weinberger from a Chicago bar to his apartment on the promise of spending the weekend with him. Jeremiah was a native of Puerto Rico. He resided in Chicago in the 90s and was working as a customer service representative for a video store. He was described as an art lover with impeccable style. He was drugged and twice injected with boiling water this time into the skull because the acid wasn't working, Kandi. So he thought, maybe the solution I'm injecting is what's wrong, not the fact that I'm drilling a hole in their skull.
So we're just going to continue to do it, yes. And now we're just going to put boiling water in there. Just cook the brain.
Boiling water. This unfortunately did send him into a coma instantly, but he died 2 days later. So he did stay alive for a little while. Jeffrey kind of thought that he had succeeded for a short period of time. On July 15th, Jeffrey encountered 24-year-old Oliver Lacey while he was out and about. Oliver was a standout track racer at River Forest High School and has since been described as outspoken. The youngest of 3 sons, Oliver is said to have been a family man who even wore his father's cross after his passing. Oliver was also the father of a 2-year-old child and was engaged to be married. Oliver agreed to Jeff's ruse of posing for photos and accompanied him back to his apartment, where the pair engaged in some tentative sexual activity before Jeff drugged him. On this occasion, Jeff intended to prolong the time that he spent with Lacey while he was alive. After unsuccessfully attempting to render Lacey unconscious with chloroform, he phoned his workplace to request a day's absence, which he was granted, just to make sure that he could take as much time with him as he could. Although the next day he was actually suspended from his job. After strangling Oliver, Jeff had sex with the corpse. Before dismembering him, he placed Oliver's head and his heart in the refrigerator to consume later, and his skeleton in the freezer. 4 days later, on July 19th, Jeff received a word from his job that he was fired. So apparently, murder was taking up a lot of his time.
Right.
He was constantly showing up to work late, or would show up drunk, or just wouldn't show up at all. So they were done with him. Upon receipt of this news, though, Jeff lured 25-year-old Joseph Bradenhoff to his apartment. Joseph had a wife and 3 young children back in Minnesota. The children ranging between the ages of 2 and 7. He was in search for a job to help financially support his family. And Joseph had actually left a job interview on the 19th of July.
Aww.
And was never seen again.
That's terrible.
Yeah. His family shared that he loved sports and fishing and was a devoted father. Joseph was strangled and left laying on Jeff's bed, covered with a sheet, for 2 days. After that, Jeff removed the sheet to find that the head of his victim was covered in maggots.
Ugh, gross.
Sorry. So he just decapitated the body, cleaned up the head, and placed it in the refrigerator. He later placed Joseph's torso, along with 2 other victims that he had killed in previous months, in a large barrel of acid that he had obtained and was keeping in his apartment.
Okay, because that's okay.
Yeah, just keeping... I would like to know, how are you getting your hands on this acid?
A whole barrel of it.
Whole barrel of it. Where are you going? How are you buying that? I don't know. It's... On July 22nd, 1991, Jeff approached 3 men with an offer of $100 for photos. He offered them beer and that they could all come back to like his apartment and party. So 2 of the men were like, yeah, I don't really want to take any naked photos, but I'll come back and party.
Yeah.
Cool. We're in. The only one that he actually really wanted was one of the three men, though. Tracy Edwards, he was 32 at the time. They agreed to go back to his apartment, and he actually ended up giving the other 2 men the wrong address. So they never showed up. But Tracy goes back with Jeff in a cab to his apartment. Once inside the apartment, Tracy notes a foul odor, several boxes of acid on the floor, which Jeff claimed to just use for cleaning supplies. After some minor conversation, Tracy responds to Jeff's request to look at his tropical fish. So Jeff's like, hey, check out my fish. I got these fish. Tracy looks at the fish, and instantly Jeff tries to handcuff his wrists. Right? When Tracy asks what's going on, Jeff unsuccessfully attempts to rope both of his wrists together and handcuff the other wrists. Mm-hmm. And asked, when that didn't work, Tracy was like, hey, I'm not really into that. Thanks anyway, though.
Right.
They go to Jeff's bedroom, ultimately to pose for the nude photos. But instead, Jeff turns on the Exorcism 3.
Okay. What?
Yeah. Not even the original, not the second, but specifically Exorcism the 3rd. He says he wants to watch a movie. At this time, Tracy's in the bedroom. He notes that Jeff has male posters on the wall. And he also sees this 57-gallon drum.
Right.
In the corner of the room. And then notes that it has a strong odor coming from it. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jeff pulls a knife out and informed Tracy that he's going to take nude pictures of him. And, of course, Tracy Edwards is like, okay, of course, let's just take this one step at a time, though. He's trying to stay really calm and cool and collected, but obviously is, totally freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
And, he kind of starts, unbuttoning his shirt and, trying to appease Jeff, just an attempt to keep him calm as well. Jeffrey then lays on top of him, puts his head to his chest, and says, I like the sound of your heart. Oh, I'm going to eat it. With the knife in his hand. How this man stayed calm and collected during this time amazes me.
I would have freaked out.
Yeah. He asks if they could go and have a beer in the living room, because that's actually where the air conditioning unit was. So I guess maybe he, said he was a little hot, a little warm. And Jeff agrees. Then when Tracy asks a few minutes later if he can use the bathroom, when the men stand up, he punches him in the face, knocking Jeff off of balance, and runs out of the apartment onto the street. Handcuffs still connected to that wrist. At 11:30 p.m. on July 22nd, Tracy flagged down 2 Milwaukee police officers, and he explained to the officers what a freak had placed the handcuffs upon him and asked if the police could remove them. When the police, key wouldn't work, they were like, we'll just have to go back and get the key from whatever dude put them on you. And takes Tracy back to the apartment.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous.
I'm not. I can't make this shit up. When the officers and Tracy arrive at apartment 213, Jeff invites the trio in and acknowledges that he did, in fact, place the handcuffs on Tracy, although he offered no explanation as to why. At this point, Tracy is telling the police about the knife and what happened in the bedroom. Jeff makes no comment to this, indicating to one of the officers that the key to the handcuffs is in his bedside dresser table. As the officer enters the bedroom, what do you think he finds? He finds all of the photos in a wide open drawer. All 74 of them.
Oh my God. And did he just leave them there?
No, they actually do.
Thank God.
They do actually act. This is when the official search of the apartment begins. Jeff is now the one who's placed in handcuffs and into the back of a squad car. More police show up. They find the knife that Tracy had said that, he had. The body parts in the fridge. Upon further search, 4 severed heads, 7 skulls were found, 2 human hearts, arm muscles, an entire torso, 2 entire skeletons, 2 severed and preserved penises, a mummified scalp, and, of course, the drum of acid that has 3 torsos inside of it.
How do you...
They said that it was more like going through, like, somebody's weird museum than a crime scene, is what their words were.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. Jeff was questioned in the early hours of July 23rd, where Jeff waived his rights to a lawyer and wished to confess, stating, quote, "I created this horror, and it only makes sense I do everything to put an end to it." He readily admits killing 16 young men in Wisconsin and 1 victim, Stephen Hicks, in Ohio. Dahmer readily admitted to engaging in necrophilia with several of his victims' bodies, including performing sexual acts with their bodies before, after, and even during dismemberment. Jeff confesses to having consumed the hearts, liver, biceps, and portions of thigh of 3 of the victims that he killed, and would tenderize the body parts he intended to consume prior to preparing meals flavored with various condiments. On February 15th, Jeff was ruled to be sane and not able to use an insanity plea, not suffering from any mental disorder at the time of these murders. Formal sentencing was postponed until February 17th. On this date, Dahmer's attorney announced his client wished to address the court. In this statement, Jeff emphasized that he had never desired freedom following his arrest, that he frankly wished for his own death. Unfortunately, Wisconsin did not have the death penalty, so that wasn't actually an option. Mm-hmm. He further stressed that none of his murders had been motivated by hatred, that he understood that nothing he either said or did could undo the terrible harm he had caused to the families or his victims and the city of Milwaukee, and that he and his doctors believed his criminal behavior had been motivated by mental disorders. Jeff added that this medical knowledge had given him some peace, and that although he understood that society would never forgive him, he hoped that God would. He says, "I know my time in prison will be terrible, but I deserve whatever I get because of what I have done. Thank you, Your Honor, and I am prepared for your sentence, which I know will be the maximum. I ask for no considerations." Jeff was sentenced to 15 life sentences to be served consecutively, which means back to back. That is 957 years.
Good.
In prison. 3 months after his conviction in Milwaukee, Jeff was extradited to Ohio to be tried for the murder of his first victim, Stephen Hicks. In the court hearing, only lasting 45 minutes, Jeff again pleaded guilty to the charge and was sentenced to a 16th life term on May 1st of 1992. After his sentencing, Jeff was transferred to Columbia Correctional Institution For the first year of his incarceration, Jeff was placed in solitary confinement due to concerns for his, for his life. Mm-hmm. With Jeff's consent, after 1 year of solitary confinement, he was transferred to a less secure unit where he was assigned a 2-hour daily work detail, cleaning the toilet rooms and other various places in the prison. Jeff eventually requested a Bible and gradually devoted himself to Christianity and became a born-again Christian. In May of 1994, Jeff was baptized by Roy Ratcliffe, who was a minister in the Church of Christ in the prison whirlpool. On the morning of November 28th, 1994, Jeff left his cell to conduct his assigned work detail. Accompanying him were 2 fellow inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. The trio were left unsupervised in the showers of the prison gym for approximately 20 minutes. At approximately 8:10 a.m., Jeff was discovered on the floor of the bathroom of the gym, suffering from extreme head wounds. He had been severely bludgeoned about the head and faced with a 20-inch barbell. His head had also been repeatedly struck against the wall in the assault as well. Although Jeff was still alive and was rushed to a nearby hospital, he was pronounced dead an hour later. Anderson had also been beaten with the same instrument and died 2 days later of his wounds. Christopher Scarver, who was serving a life sentence for murder, informed authorities he had first attacked Jeff with the metal bar in the cleaning locker area before attacking Jesse Anderson as he cleaned the inmate locker room. According to Scarver, Jeff did not yell or make a single noise during his attack. Immediately after attacking both men, Scarver went back to his cell and reported to the guards what he had done, and was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, stating that God told me to do it. Jesse Anderson and Jeffrey Dahmer are dead, unquote. Dahmer had stated in his will that he wished for no service to be conducted and that he wished to be cremated. And in September of 1995, Jeff's body was cremated and his ashes divided between his parents. And that, Kandi, and our listeners, is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer.
What a freaking doozy.
Yeah, like I said, it was a heavy hitter. It was definitely a long one. Lots to take in.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, one of the things that we talk about so often is the fact that, why we're interested in this stuff isn't because we love the gruesome details and the murder. But it's the psychological aspect of it. And this case just intrigued me so much. I literally couldn't stop doing research. I just kept going and going and going. Because like I had said so many times before, he doesn't fall in
to that normal category.
He states several times in his interviews, and if you listen to some of the documentaries, all of his interviews, are very heavily taped. So, I mean, you see him telling these people, I didn't like the killing. It wasn't something that I enjoyed about it. I just wanted these people to not leave, and I wanted to do whatever I wanted to with them. That doesn't make him any less of a monster.
No, but,
it's just such a different psychological aspect that really nobody else comes close to that I can think of. I mean, Ed Kemper is probably the closest that I can come to it. He was very open also, and I'm looking forward to when we cover him. He's another one of those, just out of the box, and he's also somebody who just spills everything once he's caught. But I mean, he's just so different from all of the other serial killers that we cover and that we are going to cover, and it's just a crazy.
It's nuts.
It is. Again, though, one of the things that I keep going back to is I just don't understand how somebody can sit there and say that he was sane.
No, and I don't see how he was not caught. There were so many times that he could have been caught before multiple people were murdered, and you did nothing.
And not to mention, he states in one of these taped interviews, that, the reporter asks him, like, if you hadn't been caught, would you still be doing this? And he says, yeah. He says, I don't see anything that would have stopped me other than this.
Well, no, he was getting away with it. Why would he stop?
How is that mentally okay, though? I'm going to continue to fight for this. I don't truly believe this man was mentally sane. Now, I understand that we have to, and we touched on this a little bit during our happy hour episode. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to put a definition to what an insanity plea, is okay for.
Yeah.
And most of the time, they go back to this whole thing about, like, okay, what were the steps he took to hide it? What were the steps he took? You know what I'm saying? And I get that. I understand that, yes, there was some sort of cognitive, like, idea in him that he knew what he was doing was wrong. But I don't think that we can just take that blanket statement and state that everybody who knows what they're doing is wrong is also mentally sane.
Right.
That's not I don't think those two things correlate. And again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I don't do any, I can't, this is all personal opinion. Mm-hmm. But I truly believe that if he had gotten the mental help that he wanted and asked for, that his family had asked for, I don't know if all of this would have transpired the way that it did.
No.
Or if it would have happened at all.
That too. I think there was a lot missed.
I do too. Yeah, definitely a lot of missed opportunities by the police, by the doctors, by the jail. It definitely was an avoidable situation.
Oh yeah,
100%. So, well, so we're gonna bring ourselves back up a little bit.
Okay.
It's time to to get some laughs in. It's time to bring those moods back out of that dark Dahmer place. Okay, so I've got some more freaky laws.
Yeah, I love these.
We always love these. These are fun. In Alabama, it's illegal to drive blindfolded.
I would hope that's illegal everywhere.
I can't blame you, Alabama. In Alaska, you can't put an animal in the back of an open vehicle. It's interesting. Like, I wonder if that means, like, you can't, like, put your dog in the back of your truck. I think Alaska would be the perfect place to put your dog in the back of a truck and go for a drive.
And it didn't specify alive or dead, so...
Oh, good point. You're right. It didn't say that. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
In Arizona, it's illegal for a donkey to sleep in a bathtub.
Why you got a donkey in the bathtub?
Somebody had a donkey in the bathtub and they had to make it illegal. In Arkansas, you cannot honk your horn near a sandwich shop after 9 p.m.
So if someone's just sitting at the green light and you're right beside the sandwich shop, you can't honk your horn for them to go?
Apparently not. Not after 9. In Arkansas.
Okie dokie.
Yep. In California, it's illegal to whistle for a lost canary after 7 a.m. In Colorado, it's illegal to keep a couch on your porch. We need to bring that law down here to good old Stokes County, because let me tell you, the amount of couches that are on porches around here
is really
ridiculous.
Too much.
Too much.
Really too much.
I'm for this one. I like it.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just...
In Delaware, you cannot sell your dog's hair.
Why would I want to?
I don't know. Apparently the law does go... It also covers cat hair, too. You can't sell that either.
Why would I want to?
I don't know why you would want to, nor who would buy it.
Why do these things have to become laws? Because these people are weird.
Last but not least, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up because this was a very long episode. In Hawaii, it is illegal to place a coin in one's ear.
A coin ain't going to fit in my ear.
Even if it did, you couldn't put it in there in Hawaii.
Okay,
You have to travel to another state for that.
I'll remember that.
You guys, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate all of your support. Kandi and I are going to be recording a new outro here soon, but until then, you get to hear our normal one. But until then, we are going to go ahead and remind you, we do now have a website, sipsofcrime.com. You can go on there and just check out all of our podcast episodes, all of our, links. You can get to know me and Kandi a little bit better.
Monthly newsletter.
And we have an awesome monthly newsletter where we feature a monthly wine and a featured podcast, what we're reading right now, some of our book interests. So, go on there, click around, check it out. Tell your friends about our podcast, share the love. We love you guys, and we hope that you have a great rest of your night. Bye!
Bye!
You can join our freaky little family both on Instagram and Facebook and find all of the featured photos from this episode
at Sips of Crime.
For a chance to have your story featured on one of our future episodes, send us a Gmail
to sipsofcrime@gmail.com.
And you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we would really appreciate you giving us a 5-star review because it really helps other people find our podcasts and our episodes. Thanks for listening. Stay alive.